Right, we're live, Ranjan. Hi, Ranjan. Hello, if anybody does tune into this. Ranjan and I are going to discuss the title in the video, Dominic Cummigs, then who is Curtis Yarvin and the neo-reactionary right, and then look at energy security versus net zero, which is the slide in the window. I'm just going to see if this is actually coming out on the stream. Which it looks like it is. I haven't got right, so we are working. It is live, so I'm going to turn that off to save some bandwidth because I know that we're going. I'm just going to check that we're live on the Substack page, Ranjan. And then I'll turn that off as well. You sure as hell miss 100 up, 100 down broadband when you don't have it. Yeah, that's working on the page as well. So he is watching this embedded in the page Substack. Welcome. It's not coming through just yet. Yeah, okay, that's coming through now as well. So I'll close that. Right, so the windows I've got open, you can probably see Curtis Yarvin there if you're, oh no, right, and here we go. Share screen, and I'm going to share the window, and I'm going to share that window, share. Okay, so that will just be coming out online. The delay is probably about 30 there. Out of Downing to save some bandwidth, or I can open the article if you prefer. I can see where what do you want to do? Well, if you can just tell us about Dominic Cummigs then, and what he says in that article, Ranjan.
I just caught a bit of it. I mean, I didn't read all of it. I just saw he's basically saying. I saw the beginning. Well, it's called Whitehall Must Fall, and at the beginning, to get everyone interested, he says, "Oh, what would our forefathers have thought if they knew that there was a Whitehall industrial mass rape cover-up by Pakistani and Somali rape gang cover-up children, white children?" And he was saying, what would they all have said? As soon as I saw that, I thought, what is the Somali cover-up? I looked it up, and apparently there was one in Bristol about 12 years ago or 10 years ago. But the way in which you put it is sort of like giving huge prominence to something that, you know, particularly on the racial thing. But he doesn't really say, you know, with much balance. Well, he's exclusively blaming immigration for that. But then afterwards, he's talking about the Ukraine war, which I pretty much agreed with him on. And he said it was, you know, useless and a waste of time. And it was so that Ukraine could join NATO. And he's basically just saying, we're being lied to. We must get rid of Westminster.
Right. Okay. Well, obviously, that's an interesting and controversial point of view. Now, my takeaway, I watched an interview with him recently. What always strikes me about him is he's obviously a technocrat. He's in love with all the tech, and he's obviously an elitist. Okay, because he's quite dismissive of Trump. Okay, but what his solution is just to replace elitist technocrats with better technocrats and maintain this elite top-down approach. And that is what I personally would define the neo-reactionary right as. Curtis Yarvin is supposed to be the intellectual driving force behind that. He's a prodigy of Peter Thiel and is also someone who J.D. Vance is supposed to have read a lot of and is fond of quoting. So I did a deep dive into Yarvin last year, and on the screen I've got this. This is one of his poems. Okay, I'm just going to read it. So this is Curtis Yarvin. The highest art is propaganda. Virgil and Shakespeare, propaganda. Eisenstein, propaganda. Leonardo, propaganda. We only think of bad propaganda, or don't pass it as propaganda, which makes it good propaganda. Never forget that this is obvious. In truth, the Latin propagation of the faith well paints the need for spirit, theme, or breadth in art, purpose flowing like a spring breeze, or ever screaming like a hurricane. In The Tempest, for example, Shakespeare invented racism. There is no void or faith in art, just dull, muddy unconscious. Faith of algae and mosquitoes. Purpose is the hot artery of power, the canyon carving rapid fall in regimes where art is seditious or otherwise bereft of purpose. Daniel is already captive in Babylon, and the wall he will write on is built. Nothing is bigger than propaganda. Nothing is older than propaganda. Nothing is finer than propaganda. Now, one has to assume, as he's using his poetic voice there, that these are a true reflection of what's in the head of Curtis Yarvin. I would question whether he does indeed communicate with his heart very often at all. But that is, to me, a fascist. I mean, if Goebbels had written that, you wouldn't really argue that quite reflected his point of view either. And my contention would be, well, Dominic Cummings just hides it better than Yarvin. I suspect Yarvin's on the spectrum, and I don't think Dominic is. And so many of these tech bros are so clearly on the spectrum. If you see Peter Thiel interview when he was asked about Israel the other day, he's not very articulate, is he? But there you have it. So the neoreactionary right. My question is Dominic Cummings part of that movement in the UK? So with that, you have to look at the funding of Cambridge Analytica, for instance, and how that was all passed through the Brexit debate. And there were two debates going on about Brexit. Those of us that wanted power restored to the House of Commons and the British constitutionalist type of argument. And then there's the elitist argument going for more centralised control, global centralised control, expressed through a debt-based dollar instrument of some sort to replace the petrodollar. That's my preposition, as it were. So, what say you?
Yeah, I think fair enough. Each to their own. I think you're a bit softer for Cummings than I am. Maybe not as soft as you have been. For me, yeah, he's as I said.
Oh, come on, let's not pussyfoot around. Go for the jugular. Give me your best rebuttal of our Dominic.
No, I think you're right. Cummings may have seemed to have been an interesting person in the past at times. And it may well have been that he gave off the idea that he had some secret plan that was going to help everyone. But a bit like Boris with his secret plan, or Theresa May with her secret, legal advice that she ended up having to reveal that was bogus or didn't have anything in it. All of these people, they like to say that they've got some secret plan, but then when you ask them to talk about it, there's nothing there. Or
quite no solutions, just lots of hand wringing and why everything else is bad. I agree. Let's talk about Boris. Okay, so Boris is a population nut, as was his father. Cummings doesn't really get into that as far as I've seen, but I know his father-in-law is of that persuasion. Boris's father wrote a book about population control. It's difficult to get hold of these days, but it came out in the early 80s, as you probably know. Boris's father won a poetry competition when he was at Oxford, as a young man, and he wrote it's a very beautiful poem, actually. So there's this sort of, I don't know, contradiction where within their own in-group, they're very humane. But for the great unwashed, for the seething horde, as it were, or herd, they you know, they've got more of a the Irish writer that was into all of this stuff, you know the one I mean, wrote Pygmalion. Who wrote Pygmalion? Ranjan?
Oh, sure.
Shaw, that's it.
George.
Bernard Shaw, yeah. So his views, and then also obviously the Huxleys. And so going back into all the Malthusian stuff and all the rest of it, would you say, I'm asking you now, would you say that Dominic Cummigs is a Malthusian? The Malthusian neo-reactionary right, for instance, which I would put Musk into. And of course, they breed like rabbits because they believe the fruit of their own loins is pure and true, and yet the fruit of everyone else's loins is so much cannon fodder. Would you agree?
Well, I think Musk is quite open that he thinks Musk is open about saying that white people need to breed more. Farage is open about that too. Now he has been, because he said for the Reform Party, you know, we will reward you if you have more children. You know, basically, if you're a white Reform voter.
So you know, Farage and Cummings don't get on apparently. I would put them both in the neo-reactionary right. So within the neo-reactionary right, what are the bifurcations I would be looking at? And so on this, let's talk about Steve Bannon. Where does he come into it? It's all this fourth turning stuff, isn't it, with Bannon? He wrote a series of films that he produced with Breitbart, actually about the Occupy movement. Obviously, their subtext was to try to stop the Occupy movement from remaining coherent. And his films mainly focused on how they had been infiltrated by these Saul Alinsky rules for revolutionary sort of I don't know. I don't suppose are they trots? I've really no idea. But that was his sort of take. So Trump losing his base if the US get involved in Iran, and that gets onto my post about energy security and net zero.
Let's get into it.
Have you seen any of the commentary on that? Have you seen Scott Ritter, for instance, and his comments? Colonel MacArthur, he commentates on that sort of thing a lot.
No.
Glenn Deason, he's a Swedish
geopolitical. No, I haven't.
Have you not seen any of those guys?
No. What have you come across?
Well, I just sort of, tune in now and again to what they're saying. Scott Ritter's premise is that Israel have started something they're not capable of finishing with Iran, and Netanyahu is gambling that the US will come in. So I've run a Bayesian analysis, a very basic one, which comes up with a 20% probability of an Israeli false flag on US material or people in theatre. That's quite a high percentage. I suspect it may be higher than that. And I've looked at the historical precedents. So that's USS Liberty, the bombing of the US ship in dock when Gwyneth Todd was actually out there as a naval intelligence officer, and the Press TV film that came out about 12 or 13 years ago, because she had to flee the US. She lives in Australia these days, but that's really worth watching. And obviously it's very, very
I don't know about that.
Well, it's in my blogs. I've embedded it into these blogs, etc. So you know about the USS Liberty, do you? Before
in the 60s. I know about that.
In the late 60s,
an American an American ship in the late 60s.
That's right, and the White House was fully aware of what was going on, and they really wanted the ship to lose all hands. And there's a veterans organisation of people who did survive, but those sorts of subterfuges, false flag subterfuges, which obviously then brings up the Clausen thing. You know, he does a 12-minute skit almost at one of these think tanks saying, well, it'd be quite easy to start a war with Iraq. He talks about mini submarines. You can do all sorts of things to get it all to kick off. As it happens, people won't be thinking about false flags because Netanyahu has taken preemptive action. Of course, the follow-up on that, looking for a false flag to start, is actually a slightly different thing to doing a false flag to get other people to join in. And that's what I think everyone should be on alert for.
Well, I think that when the Israeli Prime Minister, Netanyahu, when he came to England, I remember some people protesting, Israelis, and I think one of them, there was this conversation where somebody said, oh, you know, I came here from Iraq or Iran, where my family used to live. We were forced to leave. And another person said to them, so did I, but the reason we were forced to leave was because the bombs that went off were actually planted by Israel. So we were actually attacked by Israelis in our own country so that we would move to Israel, you know, so that it would look like we were being bombed. So the false flag, I mean, so these are all the type of thing that you're talking about. It feels like maybe they've been doing this all over the place for a long time. What about 9/11? I mean, I think some people categorize that.
Indeed, yeah. Well, Project Gladio is the big one with that. And anyone that isn't aware of Daniel Ganzer's work should take a look at it. Yeah. So anyway, let's just look at how this all fits in with what I think is happening in the monetary system, what they've been talking about at Bilderberg in Stockholm this week, what was on the agenda. And the way I've approached it in this blog this morning, I've done about 2 or 3, I think, is Laura Kusenberg does the Sunday Politics show. And this morning, one of the guests was Lord John Browne, the former CEO of Bilderberg. Not Bilderberg, a British Petroleum. Yeah, which used to be the Anglo-Iranian oil company. And of course, they actually engineered the fall of Mossadegh, who was a democratically elected prime minister in Iran, and appointed the Shah, right? And then fast forward then from his appointment to 1979, when they deposed the Shah, and the Shah had been very vocal. There are a couple of 60 Minutes interviews where he's complaining about their quotas. And BP, ever since it was involved in Iran, had always reined back oil production in Iran as part of the Texas Oil Commission to keep production at a level that will sustain the oil price. That was first for their profits. And when it became the petrodollar after Bilderberg 1973, the swing production role was transferred to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, with the petrodollar recycling, which was the brainchild of Henry Kissinger, got the US dollar off the gold standard onto the petrodollar standard. And that wasn't a defensive reaction. It was a pre-planned strategy. And a guy called Levy gave a paper at the 73 Bilderberg actually saying that there was going to be a 400% increase in the price of oil, lots of petrodollars, etc., etc. So effectively, he had a hell of a crystal ball, that guy. So I was interested to see Lord Browne on the show today. One Anglo-Iranian oil company, you've got Iran at the moment, you've got regime change on the agenda for Iran. And of course, who should appear as one of the guests but the son of the Shah, which was quite interesting. And then Lord Browne went on in his summing up to say, I transcribed this myself this morning. It's what I was doing when I'm just going to read. Here he is here, a picture on the screen. That's Lord Browne sat in the middle. To the right is Hugh Fernley Whittingstall, who's described as a chef and an activist. Those of you who remember River Cottage. He's had a haircut, much like myself. This is Muz Masood, who's an Iranian exile who fled the theocracy when the Shah was deposed in a colour revolution, I would argue. And then Lord Browne in the middle. So this is what he said when he wanted to sum up. So I would like to scoop it all up in one go and bring it back here. The spending review, energy security and net zero. It's my firm belief we really need to focus now and push very hard on energy security as a real objective of net zero, as the counterpart objective of getting more efficient as the research that goes with it, and make sure we deliver the projects which were put into the spending review. This is really important. We can achieve a couple of objectives at once, not many. And then Laura Kusenberg says, are the government plans credible? And Lord Browne responded, some of them are credible. The timing is always too bullish. It takes time to do lots of big projects. When I was working with the government, I kept saying, you've got to think about it, get a grip on projects, make sure you're realistic, not just accept what people say, so that they can get into the queue. They can't. We've got to do lots of different things here. So as I said to you, and you accuse me of amnesia, he seems like a perfectly nice bloke. I quite like Lord King, who was, I think, the last serious governor of the Bank of England, and I actually like Laura Kusenberg as well. So what am I, a Mossad agent or something? Of course not.
Roger. Are you a Mossad agent? Listen, Roger, we both know that you do have sympathies for Israel. So I'm not. It's and so does a Mossad agent. So I'm not saying that's what you are.
And maybe that's where the similarities would either begin or end. But the point that I would say is that my particular take on things is as a businessman that just wants an even playing field.
Yeah.
And I am outspoken against the debt-based monetary system. I think it doesn't work. I think it's inefficient. And I think it thrives on a myth of artificial scarcity that doesn't exist with the possibilities of modern production. So that's that. So in terms of the Bilderbergs that Lord Browne attended, 95, Bergenstock, Switzerland, 97, Atlanta, Georgia, and 2004, Stresa in Italy. So people can read this blog and see what they were talking about then. Actually, how similar those issues were to the Bilderberg meeting in 73, but also how similar the issues that were on the agenda of 2025. Now, I personally don't find that surprising, and it's not a coincidence. Just one thing before moving on from this. Fernley Whittingstall responded to Lord Browne at the end of this. I haven't transcribed it, but what he said was quite interesting. He sort of said energy's too narrow. There's farming and a bunch of other things that he's concerned with. I must say I do agree with him. But again, Fernley Whittingstall, I've got a couple of River Cottage cookbooks. Used to watch River Cottage and got some good recipes from it. But this side of Fernley Whittingstall, I've not encountered before, and I'm rather hoping that he's better than a pound shop Monbiot. You know exactly what I mean by that, don't you?
Yeah.
So I hope he's not a pound shop George Monbiot. Who himself is a sort of a pound shop caricature of an environmentalist.
Monbiot used to do some very good. He did some very, very good stuff in the past, long time ago. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his falling out with Noam Chomsky made me laugh. And I've always looked at him quite skeptically since. And lots of people react to that saying, "Oh my God, you know, Chomsky, he's controlled opposition and all this sort of thing." You know, there is such a thing as controlled opposition, and there are, you know, we all have some parts of us which other people will fundamentally disagree with. My view is, well, it's good to get those disagreements out in the open rather than have enduring resentments. You know, kind of, you know, get over it. Let's figure this out. But yeah, this blog goes through all of my reasoning for putting forward my theory of the 16-to-1 bi-oilism, I'm calling it. This is a good picture. This is Donald Trump back in the 80s shining the shoes of J.R. Ewing. And anyone that's familiar with the Dallas series, the oil cartel in Dallas, which is basically a worldwide oil cartel, the Texas Railroad Commission, Blair's book on control of oil, etc. There's a whole bunch of research and books that, you know, most people listening to this will never have heard of. You can read them online on the Wayback Machine or the Internet Archive. You know, I usually put links where you can download them from LibGen, which is a pirate. You know, you can download an EPUB or a PDF or whatever if you can't afford to buy them. A lot of them are out of print, actually, so you couldn't buy them even if you looked for them. So I'm showing my workings out here. It just so happens that the last couple of months' work I've been doing is I've been developing a strategy to sell my own business strategy and property development strategies to people that want to get their money out of the volatile, what they call the markets. And, you know, there's no doubt what's happening in Iran is going to cause some turmoil. It'll increase the credit crunch. I think that's a design and not a bug. But in the meantime, rather than buying gold or portable proxies for wealth or whatever, as a property developer, obviously I like land, and I like land which I can build on, because I'm a building property developer rather than a land speculator. So my pitch to my equity investors is always why some of their investment stash, if you like, should be in my ventures, as opposed to what I would see more casino-based speculative ventures in the rigged markets. That's not to say I don't think the land market is rigged. I think it is, but in a different way, because in the same way that oil is fundamentally part of how money is done, so is property, particularly residential property and the mortgage market. And mortgages as debt instruments is not a good thing. I oppose usury. I think usury is a big mistake. But actually, a dishonest monetary unit based on usury is more damaging than an honest monetary unit that uses usury. So to that extent, I will be pragmatic. So on the screen at the moment, this is an old cartoon. That's William Jennings Bryan in a red suit leading a crowd of people away from the gold standard, and on the little thing dangling on his stick says 16-to-1, and that's the old ratio between old gold and silver. So that's quite an interesting old thing there. And then this is another famous old cartoon.
Is that an old picture then? Is that, Roger, is that an old picture?
It's from 1896. Yeah, in some of these blogs, there are lots of old cartoons and stuff from Puck magazines, an American magazine, much like Punch back in the day. And they had some great cartoons. So this shows the wasp golden tail wagging the silver dog of the rest of the United States. In fact, which is that's as old as the hills, that idea in America. But within the golden tail, you have Alexander Hamilton, and then you get into thoughts of who are the traitors in America who are doing the bidding of the East India Company. So I'm fond of pointing out Edmund Burke's speech against the East India Company in whenever it was. I think it was 1760, whenever it was. Anyway, he was very disgusted with what they did in India. Okay. So it's a very old story, the gold silver story. And again, based on a mythological scarcity of the stuff. They used to pour gold into the foundations of temples in honor of Delphi in ancient Greece. Not to honor Delphi, just to get rid of the bloody stuff, because there was too much of it to have it valuable as a currency if they didn't, you know.
Wow.
So, you know, there are lots of little numismatic sort of historical factoids like that, which are quite important. And my blog ends with my poem "Ties of the Dolomone," which I wrote in 2016. In that blog, there's actually a video of the reading I did of it the day I finished it in 2016. I'm not going to bore people and read it now. We started already with one of Curtis. So, what have you got to say about all of that, then, Ranjan?
Yeah, interesting that the
Hello?
bimetallism idea is one that you referred to, and I think when I was watching, was it Dan Dix or Dave Dix, whoever it is that's Canadian at Bilderberg, he said that he assumes that they're going to try and bring in a central bank digital currency.
How exciting! There's someone making comments. Dan Dix, yeah.
So that kind of links in with what you were saying about Jennings Browne. Obviously, Jennings Browne wanting the silver. But I think, did you say that the son of the Shah of Iran was on the BBC programme?
Yeah, say again.
Did you say that the son of the Shah of Iran was on the Koonsberg show?
Ranjan, hi.
Hi.
I've stopped I'm going to stop the screen share now. And
are we still streaming?
Yes, we're back on now. It will be streaming again. So someone has been commenting. Here we are. I can't read this. I think it's either Russian or Ukrainian. Could be Greek, actually. Actually, no, it's Greek, isn't it? So NATO is the legacy of the British Dutch West India Company banking protection racket. I agree absolutely with that. So to that extent, we're preaching to the choir.
Well, it's probably someone who follows your Substack.
I've no idea. Not many people do. I think it's all a bit long-winded.
Well, yeah, I think I was just saying that. I think you told me that the head of the son of the Shah of Iran was on.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he was. Seemed like a perfectly nice chap. But you know,
amazing,
not as if he hasn't got a dog in the fight, though, is it?
Yeah, exactly. An amazing combination to have John Browne, head of what was called Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, on, and then this guy on. I mean, it does make you think that this has been planned for a long time, and that these are the kind of people that they wheel out when Israel attacks Iran. I don't like the idea of innocent people dying, etc., etc. But on a day like this, I don't suppose anyone in Israel should be surprised that Iran send a couple of things back. Yeah, it's just. I remember when Saddam sent Scud missiles on Iraq in 1990. Sorry, on Israel. In fact, one of my old flatmates, I think he was born in Haifa, and I think he said he was in Haifa. He remembers it.
Yeah, an old friend of mine in the electronics business was out there at the time as well. He used to do a lot of work with Moshe Dayan, the Israeli defense minister at the time.
Right.
But,
Yeah, I mean, all these people involved in all of these different things. I think I heard a story. Someone told me that Germany are basically replacing the US at the top of the table for NATO. But then you also see contradictory evidence. Someone told me that northern Iraq has been an autonomous Kurdish province in all but name for 20 years, which was something. And apparently 2 families control it. 2 families. They have, one is called the Talibanis, and I can't remember the other family begins with a B, and they are they kind of compete with each other to run that province. I asked what their relationship was like with Öcalan and the PKK, and it's not good because they are kind of capitalist stroke feudalist, and Öcalan is not. So I can see future tension with because I tried to put on a little bit of Turkish CNN, not that I would have understood it, but it's always interesting to see what Erdogan has to say about this type of thing.
Yeah.
Because
just can you see the comments?
No.
Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder whether that's actually Hebrew. I mean, I don't speak Greek, Hebrew, or Russian, so but it's acrylic text, and
let's have a look. So what? This is on your YouTube.
Well, it appears in the stream thing as well. Hold on, I'll ask.
No, that's not Hebrew.
It could be Hebrew, Hungarian, that's Russian, or
yeah, it's Cyrillic. Yeah. No, that's not Hebrew.
You think it's Hungarian or Greek?
Yeah, that's it's Russian.
And there's a comment saying it's not in our rules to target civilians, and I'm assuming that that's referring to the charge that the Iranians are and the Israelis aren't.
It's just so funny. Israelis not attacking civilians. Now that's funny.
Yeah, quite. So, collateral damage in any sort of hot war, you're going to kill civilians. It's obvious.
No, but I mean, Israelis are purposely killing civilians. I mean, of course they are.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
of course they are, because they kill so many of them. They kill so many of them.
Yes, of course.
Like,
yeah.
All of these babies, they're starving and everything like that. They're obviously.
I know, it's appalling.
Because I suppose that Gaza, their rule is they want to get rid of everyone. So,
that certainly seems to be the case, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, look, Ranjan, as you know, and I know, we could go on for hours, but I think we've hit the main points here. And let's have another chat in a few days when we see things how they do pan out.
I'll chat to you in person when you're in town.
Oh, here we are. Aerospace Forces of the Russian Federation. So it must be Russian. Hello, comrade. How you doing? Very nice to hear from you. Yeah.
Right, I'll log off for now.
Very good to talk to you, Ranjan. Take care, my friend.
See you very soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.